The heavy glass door of Le Canard swung open with a whisper of expensive hinges, and the November Paris air followed us inside, all damp stone and roasting chestnuts. Thalia's small fingers tightened around mine as we stepped into warmth scented with fresh espresso and almond croissants. The cafe was all dark walnut paneling and leather booths, the kind of place I would never have entered 6 years ago when I still had something to hide from. Mama, look! Thalia's voice carried that particular breathless excitement as she pointed at the pastry display, her dark curls bouncing. The one with the chocolate! I smiled despite the exhaustion pressing against my ribs. After your tartine, mon coeur, something with substance first. But I am substantial, she protested in her earnest way, using a word she had learned last week and had not stopped deploying since. Saskia said so. I scanned for an empty table, mentally calculating whether we had time before my shift at the tapestry restoration studio. Saskia did not mind if I was late. She had given me the position 4 years ago when I had shown up with a 2-year-old and desperation in my eyes. But I tried not to take advantage of her kindness. Thalia tugged my hand toward a corner booth near the window. That is when I saw him. Time did not just stop, it shattered. My breath caught somewhere between my lungs and throat, my feet suddenly rooted to the herringbone floor as if the wood had grown around my ankles. Caius. He sat in a corner booth, a laptop open before him, a demi-tasse of espresso halfway to his lips. 6 years had carved away any softness, leaving only sharp angles and shadows. His dark hair was slicked back from a face that belonged on ancient coins, all harsh beauty and controlled violence. Even in a tailored black three-piece suit with the vest unbuttoned, revealing the dark tribal tattoo across his chest, he radiated the kind of danger that made people instinctively step aside. His eyes found mine across the cafe. The demi-tasse froze midway to his mouth. His entire body went absolutely still, the kind of stillness that predators achieve right before they strike. Those dark eyes, almost black in the moody lighting, pinned me in place with an intensity that made my skin prickle with recognition and terror. I saw it all flash across his face. Shock, fury, something raw and wounded that he tried to mask too late. Maman. Talia's voice seemed to come from underwater. Why did we stop? I want to sit down. I could not move, could not breathe, could not do anything but stare at the man I had fled from 6 years ago, the father of the child whose hand I was crushing in panic. Caius rose from his seat, laptop forgotten, espresso abandoned. He moved through the cafe like water around stones, weaving between marble-top tables, eating up the distance far too quickly. I should have run, should have grabbed Talia and bolted through that heavy door back into the Paris cold. But my legs had gone mutinous, my body betraying me the way my heart had 6 years ago when I had first let him in. Maman, who is that man? Talia's voice lost its playful tone. Why is he looking at us like that? Before I could answer, before I could even formulate a lie, Caius was there, 3 feet away. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker, smokier, uniquely him. His chest rose and fell with controlled breaths, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides as if physically restraining himself from reaching for me. Ione. My name on his lips was a prayer and an execution order. 6 years. I managed a nod, unable to form words. Up close, I could see the fine lines bracketing his eyes, the exhaustion carved beneath them. He looked like he had aged a decade compressed into 6 years, like he had been fighting a war I could not see. His gaze dropped to Talia, who had instinctively moved behind my leg, gripping my jeans. I watched his eyes trace her features with terrible methodical precision. Dark curls like mine, stubborn chin, delicate nose, and then his eyes widened. Because Thalia had one feature that was not mine. Her eyes, those distinctive dark eyes that appeared almost black in certain light, ringed with a subtle amber edge. exactly like his. How old? Barely above a whisper, but carrying such raw intensity that a well-dressed couple at the nearest table glanced over with concern. Thalia stepped out from behind my leg, arms crossed in a gesture I recognized with painful clarity. His gesture. I am 5 3/4. My maman says men who look like trouble usually are trouble. She studied him with unsettling directness. Are you trouble, monsieur? Despite everything, despite the terror and shock and 6 years of running, I saw his lips twitch. Almost a smile. Almost. Your mama is a very perceptive woman. I know, Talia pronounced with the absolute confidence of childhood. She makes beautiful tapestries and reads me stories every night and makes the best pain perdu in all of Paris. Does she? Something in his voice had softened, gentled in a way that made my chest ache. He crouched slowly to Talia's eye level, bringing him even closer to me. The movement was careful, deliberate, the way you would approach something precious and easily startled. What is your name, Piccola? Thalia. She studied him with the seriousness only children can manage. Thalia Saskia Volkov. Volkov, my mother's maiden name, the lie I had been living for 6 years. Caius's jaw went tight, a muscle jumping beneath his olive skin. When he looked up at me, I saw accusation and barely controlled fury blazing in those dark eyes. We need to talk. I don't think... Are you going to make my maman cry? Thalia's small voice carried unexpected fierceness. Because if you are, you should leave. She cries enough already when she thinks I'm asleep. Pain flickered across Caius's face. Genuine, unguarded pain that he could not quite mask fast enough. He stood slowly, movements careful. I never want to make your maman cry, Talia. I only ever wanted to make her happy. Then you did a bad job, Thalia pronounced with brutal honesty, because she is sad all the time. Thalia, that is enough. My voice came out rough, scraped raw. I forced myself to meet Caius's eyes. We should go. No. The word was absolute, final. His hand shot out, not touching me, but blocking my path. A wall of controlled violence. You ran once, Ione. You do not get to run again. Not now. His gaze dropped to Talia. Not after taking 6 years from me. Not after taking her. You do not understand. Then make me understand. He stepped closer, invading my space, his voice dropping to something dangerous. But not here. Come with me. 5 minutes. And if I say no? His smile was cold, sharp enough to cut. Then I will follow you to your studio, your apartment, wherever you go. Because I am not letting you disappear again, Dolcezza. Never again. The endearment, the Italian word he used to whisper against my skin, sent an unwelcome shiver through me. Talia tugged my hand, her eyes wide, moving between us. Maman, I do not like this, she whispered, and that decided it. I would not let my daughter witness whatever scene was building between us. Fine. 5 minutes. But we are staying in public. There is a garden square across the street. He gestured toward the windows. I will buy Thalia that chocolate pastry first. Before I could argue, he moved to the counter, returning moments later with a chocolate-filled croissant and a small glass of warm milk. He crouched again, offering it to Talia. Is this acceptable, Piccola? Talia looked at me for permission. When I managed a tight nod, she took it with both hands, suddenly shy. Merci, monsieur. You can call me Caius. That is a Roman name, Thalia pronounced, taking a bite. Like from ancient history. Very good. His voice held genuine warmth. You are as smart as you are beautiful. The November air bit through my thin coat as we crossed the street toward the small square. Caius guided us to a bench near a children's play area, far enough from others for privacy, but still visible, still public. I sat, pulling Thalia onto my lap despite her protests about being too old for such things. She settled with her pastry, occasionally offering me bites I could not taste past the fear coating my tongue. Caius sat beside us, close but not touching, his body angled toward mine. For a long moment, he simply watched Thalia with an expression I could not read. Hunger, grief, wonder, all tangled together. Then he spoke, his voice rough. She is mine. Not a question. A statement of absolute fact. I could not lie. Not about this. Yes. You were pregnant. When you left. 6 weeks. His hands clenched into fists on his thighs, the knuckles going white. And you did not think I had a right to know. I could not stay. The words rushed out. I found out what you really were, Caius. What you did. I could not raise a child in that world. What world? His voice went cold, deadly. What exactly do you think I am, Ione? I forced it out. A syndicate boss. A man who hurts people. For power. He stared at me for a long moment, something dark and wounded moving behind his eyes. Is that what you told yourself? To justify stealing my child? I was protecting her. From her father. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Did I ever hurt you, Ione? Did I ever raise a hand to you, threaten you, give you any reason to fear me personally? I saw the blood. My voice cracked. That night before I left. On your shirt. And I heard you on the phone talking about someone who needed to be dealt with. His jaw clenched, that muscle jumping again. You do not know what you saw, what you heard. Then tell me. My voice rose, making Talia look up from her pastry. I lowered it, pulling her closer. Tell me you are not what I think you are. Tell me I was wrong. For a long moment he just stared at me. Then he spoke, each word careful, measured. 6 years ago, I was many things. Some of them you would find unforgivable. He paused. But I was never the monster you think, and I am not that man anymore. What does that mean? It means I walked away, Ione, from all of it. Every connection, every obligation, every part of that life. His voice cracked slightly. I walked away to find you. His words hung in the air between us like smoke, impossible to grasp, impossible to believe. The sounds of the square faded into background noise, children laughing on swings, traffic humming past, the rustle of dead leaves across the pavement, all of it distant, muted, as if we existed in a separate reality where only his confession mattered. You walked away. I repeated the words, testing them, trying to find the lie hidden in their structure. You expect me to believe you just abandoned everything? Every business, every connection, every tie to that world. Caius's eyes never left mine, dark and intense and utterly certain. The day you disappeared, I tore apart Paris looking for you. When I could not find you, when I realized you had truly vanished, I made a choice. I could stay in that life and never sleep soundly again, wondering where you were, if you were safe. Or I could leave it all behind and search properly. I glanced at Talia, who was watching us with interest while licking chocolate from her fingers. The afternoon sun caught in her curls, turning them almost bronze. She looked so innocent, so untouched by the darkness we were discussing. I lowered my voice to barely above a whisper. You were the head of the syndicate. You do not just walk away from that kind of power. Do you not? He leaned back, creating space that somehow felt more oppressive than his proximity. I liquidated everything, handed my territories to men who had earned them, paid every debt, settled every obligation. It took 6 months before I was free to search for you without constantly looking over my shoulder. And yet you found me in a random café. Something dark flickered in his eyes. Not random. I have been in Paris for 3 weeks. Cold dread settled in my stomach like ice water. 3 weeks? Did you think I would not notice the woman buying restoration supplies every Tuesday from Fournier's shop? The same woman who lives above the studio on Rue de Turenne? Who takes her daughter to this exact square every Saturday morning at 9:30? My arms tightened around Talia instinctively. You have been watching us, protecting you. His correction was immediate, firm, leaving no room for argument. There are still people from my old life who might remember you, who might think you are leverage against me. People who do not know I walked away, or who do not believe it. Then staying away would protect us better. Would it? He shifted closer, voice dropping to something urgent and raw. Do you know that 3 days ago a man followed you home from the market? That he stood across the street for 20 minutes watching your windows? My breath caught. I had felt that prickling awareness, that sensation of being observed. I had dismissed it as paranoia, the same fear that had chased me for 6 years, the same ghost that woke me at 2 in the morning to check Thalia's room. One of mine dealt with it before you knew he was there. Caius's voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing the weather rather than violence done in my name. And the week before, someone tried to access your financial records. They wanted to know if you had family resources, vulnerabilities they could exploit. How do you even... Because I have people monitoring for exactly these threats. People I trust to keep you safe, even when you did not know I existed in your world anymore. His eyes held mine, dark and unrelenting. You have been protected this whole time, Ione. You just did not know it. Talia squirmed in my lap, bored with adult conversation. Maman, can I go on the swings? I wanted to say no, to keep her close, but the play area was only 10 feet away, still visible, still within reach. Stay where I can see you. She scrambled off my lap and ran to the swings, her earlier shyness forgotten in the lure of play. I watched her climb onto a swing, her small legs pumping to gain momentum, her curls flying behind her like a banner. She is beautiful. Caius spoke softly, but his voice carried such weight. Strong, brave, like her mother. Do not. I could not look at him. Do not do that. Do not try to charm your way back into my life because you happened to help me once or twice. Once or twice. His laugh was bitter, sharp as broken glass. Ione, there have been 14 incidents in 6 years. 14 times someone got too close, asked too many questions, showed too much interest. My people stopped all of them before they became problems you would even notice. The number stunned me into silence. 14. All those nights I had lain awake, terrified, thinking I was safe when I had actually been in constant danger. All those times I had told myself I was being paranoid, that no one from his world could possibly find me in Paris. I had been wrong, so catastrophically wrong. Why? The question came out broken, barely audible. If you really walked away, why keep protecting me? Why not just let me go? Because you are mine. The words were simple, absolute, carrying the weight of 6 years of searching. Because the moment I met you, you became mine. And then you took my child and ran. And I lost 6 years. 6 years I will never get back. His hands clenched into fists on his thighs, knuckles going white with the force of his grip. 6 years of first steps I did not see. First words I did not hear. Birthdays and holidays and every small moment that makes up a childhood. You stole that from me. I was protecting her from danger. From me. His voice went flat, emotionless in that way that meant he was feeling too much. You were protecting her from me. As if I would ever let harm come to my own child. As if I would ever put her in danger. You put everyone around you in danger. It is the nature of what you were. What I was. He leaned forward, intensity radiating from him like heat. Past tense. I walked away from that world, Ione. I gave up everything. Power, wealth, connections, everything I spent a decade building. And do you want to know why? I could not speak, could only shake my head. Because none of it mattered without you. His voice cracked, raw and honest, in a way I had never heard from him before. I would have given it all up 6 years ago if you had just asked. If you had just told me you were afraid. Instead, you ran. You took my child and ran. And you did not give me the chance to choose. Thalia's laughter carried across the square as another child joined her on the swings. The sound was pure, innocent, untouched by the weight of our history. I watched her swing higher, her face tilted toward the sky, completely unaware that her entire world was about to change. I need time. My voice came out thin, stretched, to think, to process all of this. You have had 6 years. Caius stood abruptly, towering over me. I have been patient. I have kept my distance. I have protected you from the shadows without demanding anything in return. But that ends now. He pulled a card from his pocket, pressed it into my hand. I am staying at the Hotel Raphael. You have until tomorrow evening to decide. Decide what? Whether you will let me be a father to my daughter? His eyes were hard, uncompromising. Or whether I will be forced to take other measures to ensure I do not lose another 6 years. The threat hung between us, not quite spoken but absolutely present. I stood slowly, the card burning in my palm like a brand. What kind of measures? Legal ones. He straightened his suit jacket with deliberate precision. I have documentation of my search for you. Proof that you fled with knowledge of your pregnancy. Evidence of your false identity. A paternity test would take 48 hours. After that, any court would grant me rights. The words hit me like physical blows. You would not. Try me. His voice was ice. I have been more than reasonable, Ione. I have given you space, time, protection. But I will not walk away from my daughter. Not again. Not ever. Thalia's laughter cut through the tension, bright and oblivious. She had made a friend. Another little girl with blonde braids, and they were racing to see who could swing higher. The normalcy of it, the innocence, made my chest ache. Tomorrow evening, I forced the words out. I will have an answer by then. He nodded once, sharp and final, then walked toward Thalia. I watched him crouch beside the swings, watched him speak to her with a gentleness that contradicted everything I thought I knew about him. She smiled at him, that gap-toothed grin that lit up her entire face. He reached out, almost touching her hair, then pulled back as if burned. When he walked away without looking back, I felt the absence of him like a wound. The walk back to the studio took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Talia chattered about the swing and the chocolate croissant and the nice man with the Roman name, completely unaware that her world had just been turned inside out. I nodded in the right places, made appropriate sounds, but my mind was elsewhere, trapped in that square, with Caius's ultimatum echoing endlessly. Saskia looked up from the antique tapestry spread across her work table as we entered. She was in her mid-60s, silver hair pulled back in an elegant twist, reading glasses perched on her nose. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, tracked from my face to Thalia to the black sedan idling across the street. Go play in the back room, mon coeur. I kept my voice light, normal. There are new colored pencils in the drawer. Thalia skipped away, already humming to herself. The moment she disappeared through the doorway, Saskia set down her magnifying lens. So, he found you. It was not a question. I sank into the chair across from her, suddenly exhausted. You knew? I suspected. She removed her glasses, studying me with those too perceptive eyes. A woman does not run the way you did, does not look over her shoulder the way you do, unless she is running from something powerful. Or someone. I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing. The studio smelled of aged fabric and linseed oil, familiar and comforting. Through the window, I could see the sedan still waiting. Watching. That car has been there for 3 days. Saskia followed my gaze. Different men, always watching this building. I thought about calling the police, but then I thought perhaps that would make things worse for you. 3 days. The same 3 days Caius claimed he had been in Paris. The same 3 days someone had followed me home from the market. He says he has been protecting us. The words tasted strange in my mouth. For 6 years, that there have been threats I never even knew about. And do you believe him? I do not know what to believe anymore. I pressed my hands to my face, feeling the weight of 6 years of running, 6 years of fear, 6 years of lying. I thought I was keeping Thalia safe. I thought distance was enough. Distance is never enough. Saskia's voice was gentle but firm. Not from a man like that. You must have known he would eventually find you. I had hoped. It sounded foolish even to my own ears. I had hoped he would move on, find someone else, forget about me. Men like that do not forget. She stood, moving to the window, looking down at the sedan. The question is not whether he found you. The question is what you will do now that he has. Before I could answer, the bell above the door chimed. I looked up expecting a customer and froze. The woman who entered was striking in a way that made the air feel colder. Tall, perhaps 5'10", with platinum blonde hair cut in a severe bob. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and her heels clicked against the floor with military precision. But it was her eyes that made my blood run cold. Pale gray, calculating, the eyes of someone who missed nothing. Iona Volkov. Her voice was cultured, crisp, with a faint accent I could not place. Or should I say, Ione Vetrano? Though I suppose you never took his name, did you? I stood slowly, positioning myself between her and the doorway to the back room where Thalia played. Who are you? Lyra Fendrel. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. An old friend of Caius's. Well, friend might be too strong a word. Business associate would be more accurate. Saskia had moved to stand beside me, her body tense. The studio is closed. You need to leave. Oh, this will only take a moment. Lyra's gaze swept the room, taking in the tapestries, the tools, the modest space. Charming. Very different from the penthouses and estates Caius used to frequent. But then, you always did prefer the simple life. Did you not? What do you want? I kept my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. To deliver a message. She pulled a cream envelope from her bag, held it between two manicured fingers. You see, when Caius walked away from the syndicate, he left certain obligations unfulfilled, certain debts unpaid. Most of us were willing to let it go. Ancient history. But there are some who feel differently. She placed the envelope on the work table between us. Tell Caius that the council remembers. Tell him that his retirement does not erase what he owes. And tell him that his little family here makes a very convenient reminder of old loyalties. The words were delivered with poisonous sweetness. I stared at the envelope, afraid to touch it. You are threatening my daughter. I am simply pointing out vulnerabilities. Lyra turned toward the door, paused, looked back. Caius walked away from a war, Ione. Wars do not end just because one soldier leaves the battlefield. Sooner or later, the fighting finds everyone. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The black sedan pulled away from the curb, and I realized with sickening certainty that it had not been there to protect us. It had been there to watch. I picked up the envelope with shaking hands, opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Thalia on the swings that morning, close up, detailed, taken with a telephoto lens, and written on the back in elegant script, "Outstanding debts always come due." My hands shook so violently the photograph nearly slipped from my fingers. Saskia caught it, her face going pale as she took in the image. Thalia on the swings, so close the camera had captured individual curls, the exact pattern of her dress, the stuffed rabbit she had been holding. They were watching her. My voice came out strangled. They photographed my daughter. Saskia set the photo down carefully, as if it might explode. You need to call him. Now. I cannot. Even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. I was already pulling out Caius's card, already seeing the elegant Hotel Raphael printed across cream cardstock. If I call him, if I let him back in, everything changes. Everything already changed the moment you walked into that café. Saskia's voice was firm, but not unkind. The moment he saw Thalia, this became inevitable. You must have known that. I had known. On some level, I had always known. 6 years of running, 6 years of looking over my shoulder, 6 years of waking in the middle of the night, convinced someone was coming for us. And here it was. Not Caius himself, but the shadows he had left behind. The debts unpaid, the obligations unfulfilled. Maman? Talia's voice called from the back room. Can I use the blue pencils? Yes, mon cœur, my voice cracked. Use whatever you like. Saskia moved to the window, looking down at the now empty street. When you first came to me 4 years ago, you were so afraid, so desperate. I did not ask questions because I could see you needed safety more than interrogation. But I always wondered what kind of man could put that much fear in such a brave woman. He never hurt me. The words came automatically. Not physically, never that. Physical hurt is not the only kind. She turned to face me, her expression gentle. But this woman today, this Lyra, she is not here because Caius hurt you. She is here because he walked away from something dangerous, and dangerous things do not like being abandoned. So this is my fault. Bitterness flooded through me. For running, for taking Thalia, for thinking I could escape. No. Saskia crossed to me, took my hands in hers. This is the fault of men who play games with power and violence. You are simply caught in the middle. But now you have a choice to make. What choice? I gestured helplessly at the photograph. They know where we live. They know her schedule. They know everything. Precisely. Which means running again will not work. They have already found you. They will find you again. She squeezed my hands. The only question is whether you will face this alone, or whether you will accept the protection being offered. Protection that comes with strings. With conditions. With him back in our lives permanently. Is that really so terrible? Something shifted in Saskia's expression. Something knowing and almost sad. You have been alone for 6 years, Ione. Working yourself to exhaustion. Jumping at shadows. Looking over your shoulder. And in all that time, have you ever truly moved on? I do not understand what you mean. Do you not? She released my hands, moved to the tapestry on her work table. An 18th century piece showing a garden scene. I have been restoring tapestries for 40 years. You know what I have learned? You cannot remove the foundational threads without the entire piece unraveling. No matter how damaged they are, no matter how much you might wish to replace them, they are woven too deeply into the structure. She looked at me pointedly. Some connections cannot be severed cleanly. They can only be acknowledged and dealt with. This is not about connection. I forced the words out. This is about safety. About keeping Thalia alive. Is it? Saskia's voice was gentle. Because from where I stand, you looked more alive in those 15 minutes with him in the square than you have in 4 years of working for me. Terrified, yes. Angry, certainly. But alive. Present. Not just surviving, but feeling Shia. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died. Because she was not wrong. For 6 years, I had been going through motions. Working, sleeping, caring for Thalia. All the mechanics of life without any of its vitality. I had convinced myself it was peace, this numbness, safety. But it had just been absence. The bell chimed again. I spun toward the door, heart hammering, expecting Lyra or worse. Instead, a young man in a black jacket stood there, looking uncomfortable. Madame Volkov? His French was accented, Russian maybe. I have a message from Monsieur Vetrano. I crossed to him slowly. What message? He extended an envelope, this one black instead of cream. He says to tell you the sedan that was watching is no longer a concern, and that you should not go home tonight. He has arranged alternate accommodations, arranged without asking me. Rage flared hot and sudden. Tell him I do not need his arrangements. The young man shifted uncomfortably. With respect, madame, he also asked me to tell you that the woman who visited, Lyra Fendrel, is being monitored. That you and your daughter are under active protection as of 30 minutes ago. And that ignoring his message would be, and I quote, catastrophically stupid. Despite everything, I almost smiled at that. It sounded exactly like Caius. Blunt, arrogant, completely certain of his correctness. Where are these alternate accommodations? The Hotel Raphael, separate suite from his own. He was very clear about that. He said you would need your own space. I looked at Saskia, who raised one elegant eyebrow. He is not wrong about going home being dangerous. She gestured to the photograph still lying on her work table. If they can photograph Talia at the park, they certainly know where you sleep. The thought of them in our apartment near Thalia's room, touching her things, made my stomach turn. But the thought of accepting Caius's protection, of stepping into his world even temporarily, terrified me almost as much. Thalia appeared in the doorway, blue pencil still in hand. Maman, are we going somewhere? That man looks serious. Yes, mon cœur. My voice came out steadier than I felt. We are going on an adventure, to a fancy hotel, just for tonight. Like a vacation? Her face lit up. Exactly like that. The young man nodded, relieved. I will drive you. Your things will be collected from your apartment and brought to the hotel. Monsieur Vetrano anticipated you would have questions and said you should call him once you are settled. Of course he did. I looked at the card still clutched in my other hand, at the phone number written in bold black ink. He had anticipated everything. The threat, my fear, my resistance, and he had moved pieces into place like we were all playing a game only he understood the rules to. Saskia touched my shoulder gently. This is the right choice. For tonight, at least. Tomorrow you can decide what comes next. But I knew, standing there with Lyra's threat in one hand and Caius's contact in the other, that tomorrow's decision had already been made. The moment Talia's photograph had appeared, the moment those words about outstanding debts had been written, any illusion of choice had evaporated. I was going to have to face Caius, not in 5 minutes in a public square, but truly face him. And I was going to have to hear the full truth about what he had walked away from and what was still following him 6 years later. The Hotel Raphael was exactly what I expected. Elegant in that understated Parisian way, all cream marble and gilded fixtures. The suite Caius had arranged was on the 4th floor, 2 bedrooms connected by a sitting area with tall windows overlooking Avenue Kléber. Talia was asleep within an hour, exhausted by the day's upheaval, curled around her stuffed rabbit in sheets that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I stood at the window, watching the city lights blur through the glass, Caius's card still in my hand. It was 9:45 in the evening, late enough that Talia would sleep through whatever conversation was coming, early enough that I could not use exhaustion as an excuse to delay. I dialed before I could change my mind. He answered on the first ring. Ione, just my name, but the relief in his voice was palpable. We need to talk. Properly this time. I kept my voice low, aware of Talia sleeping in the next room. You said you would tell me the truth. All of it. I am ready to hear it now. There was a pause, then. There is a private dining room on the 2nd floor. Empty this time of night. I will meet you there in 10 minutes. How do you know it is empty? Because I own this hotel. His tone suggested this should have been obvious. 10 minutes, Ione. Come alone. The line went dead. I checked on Talia one more time, her small chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of deep sleep, then slipped out into the hallway. The young man from earlier, Dmitriever had learned, was stationed outside our door. I am going to meet Monsieur Vetrano. I kept my voice firm. You will stay here and guard my daughter. Of course, madame. Nothing and no one gets past this door. The private dining room was intimate, perhaps 15 feet square, with a single table set for two. Candles flickered in crystal holders, casting shadows across walls covered in vintage silk. Caius stood by the window, still in his black suit from earlier, but the vest was gone and his shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. He looked tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. He turned as I entered, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? I moved to the table but did not sit. After Lyra's visit, after that photograph, what choice did you leave me? None. His honesty was brutal. I have never believed in offering choices when there is only one acceptable outcome. You and Thalia are in danger. My protection is necessary. Therefore, you are here. So this is just control, another way for you to dictate my life. No. He crossed to me, stopped just out of reach. This is me ensuring my daughter lives to see her 7th birthday. There is a difference. The words hit harder than I expected. I sank into the nearest chair, suddenly exhausted. Tell me the truth, Caius. About that night 6 years ago. About the blood and the phone call and everything I saw. He was quiet for a long moment, then moved to pour wine from a decanter on the sideboard. He set a glass in front of me, kept one for himself, and finally sat across the table. What did you think you saw? I saw blood on your shirt. Fresh blood. And I heard you on the phone in your office talking about someone who needed to be dealt with permanently. I looked at him directly. I heard you order someone's death. His jaw tightened. You heard part of a conversation and filled in the rest with your worst fears. Then tell me what I did not hear. The blood was mine. He took a long drink of wine. There had been an attempt on my life that afternoon. 3 men, hired by a rival faction. My security dealt with them, but not before one of them got close enough with a knife. The wound was not serious, but it bled through the bandage. I stared at him, trying to reconcile this with my memory of that night. You were attacked? In broad daylight, 2 blocks from our apartment. He set down his glass with precise control. I did not tell you because I did not want you to worry. Because I was arrogant enough to think I could keep that part of my life separate from you. And the phone call? His expression darkened. That conversation was not about killing anyone. It was about me being removed from my position. The council had decided I was compromised, too distracted by our relationship. They were discussing my demotion, possibly my permanent removal from leadership. You mean they were going to kill you? Perhaps. He met my eyes. Or perhaps just strip me of power and send me away. The distinction did not seem important at the time. I felt something shift inside me, some foundational assumption cracking. So when you said someone needed to be dealt with permanently, I was arguing against my own removal, trying to convince them I was still effective, still dangerous enough to keep in power. He laughed, bitter and sharp. I was fighting for my position in an organization I would have gladly abandoned if I had known you were listening, if I had known what conclusions you would draw. Why did you not tell me? The question came out broken. Why did you not explain? Because I was a coward. The admission clearly cost him. Because telling you the truth would have meant admitting how vulnerable I was, how close I had come to dying, how tenuous my grip on power actually was. I thought if you knew any of that, you would leave. So I left anyway. The irony was not lost on me. Because you were too proud to be honest. Yes. He leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. I kept secrets to protect you, to protect myself, and in doing so, I destroyed the only thing that mattered. I have spent 6 years regretting that silence. 6 years wishing I had been brave enough to just tell you the truth. The truth that you walked away, that you gave up everything. Not everything. His voice went soft. I gave up power, position, wealth, the respect of dangerous men. But I kept searching for you. I kept protecting you, even when I could not find you. Because some things are worth more than empires built on violence. I took a shaky breath, trying to process it all. The blood had been his. The phone call had been about him. 6 years of running based on assumptions and fear. Lyra said you have outstanding debts, that the council remembers. The council can remember whatever they like. His voice went cold. I fulfilled every obligation before I left, paid every debt in blood or money. If they think my retirement erases their own failures, their own weaknesses, they are mistaken. But they are still coming after us. After Thalia, they are testing boundaries. His hands clenched on the table. Seeing if I will respond to threats against my family. Seeing if the man who walked away is truly as removed as he claims. And will you respond? To protect my daughter? His eyes met mine, dark and absolutely certain. I will burn their entire world to ash if they so much as look at her wrong. The absoluteness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it settled something deep in my chest. Some primitive part of me that recognized protection when it was offered, even if it came wrapped in violence. And what about the 6 years you lost? I kept my voice steady. You said in the square that you would never forgive me for taking that time. Do you expect me to just forget that threat? His expression hardened, all the softness from discussing Thalia evaporating. I meant every word. You stole 6 years of my daughter's life from me. 6 years of watching her grow, hearing her laugh, teaching her things, being her father. You took that deliberately and without remorse. I was protecting her. You were protecting yourself. He leaned forward, voice dropping to something dangerous and honest. From having to trust me, from having to be vulnerable, from having to believe that I could be more than the monster you had decided I was. The words stung because they held truth. I had run not just to protect Talia, but because staying would have meant faith, would have meant asking questions instead of assuming answers, would have meant giving him the chance to choose us over power. You are right. The admission cost me. I was a coward too. I saw blood and heard half a conversation, and I ran because it was easier than confronting you, easier than risking you confirming my worst fears. We were both cowards. Something in his expression softened fractionally, both too proud and too afraid to be honest with each other. But that ends now. What do you mean? I mean, I am done with half-truths and distance and protection from the shadows. He stood, moved to the window, his back to me. I want to be a father to Thalia, a real father, not some distant guardian she never sees. And that requires proximity, time, trust. My heart started hammering. What are you proposing? 6 months. He turned to face me. You and Talia live at my estate outside Paris. Secure location, full staff, every protection measure possible. You get to know me again, see who I have become. Thalia gets to know her father, and I get the chance to prove I am not the man you ran from. 6 months of living with you, 6 months of being a family. His voice was firm. Separate rooms, your own space, whatever boundaries you need. But we do this properly, Ione. No more running, no more hiding. We face this together, and if I refuse, then I pursue legal custody. He crossed back to the table, placed both hands flat on the surface, leaned down so we were eye level. I have evidence of your flight, documentation of the search, proof that you deliberately hid my child from me. A paternity test will take 48 hours. After that, any judge would grant me at minimum joint custody. So this is extortion. This is reality. His voice was steel. You can accept my protection willingly. Let me be a father to our daughter, in a controlled environment where we both have input. Or you can force my hand legally and lose any semblance of control over the situation. Your choice. That is not a choice. Anger flared hot. That is a threat. Yes. He did not flinch from it. It is. Because I am done being patient. Done being reasonable. Done watching from the shadows while my daughter grows up thinking she has no father. I have given you 6 years, and I will not give you one more day. The fury in his voice was matched by something else. Grief. Raw and unfiltered. I realized with sudden clarity that beneath the threats and the ultimatums, he was in pain, real pain. The kind that came from missing birthdays and first words and all the small moments that made up childhood. Tell me about your estate. My voice came out quieter than intended. This place where you want us to live. 20 acres outside Paris. Secure perimeter. Guards that I trust with my life. A house large enough that you will never feel crowded. He paused. It has a library. Gardens. Space for Thalia to run and play safely. Everything she could want. And what about what I want? Tell me. He sat back down, studying my face. Tell me what you want, Ione, and if it is within my power, I will give it to you. I want my daughter to be safe. Then accept this arrangement. I want to not feel like a prisoner. Separate entrance to your rooms. Freedom to come and go as you please within the estate. Continued work at the studio if you want it, though I would prefer you did not until the Lyra situation is resolved. I want you to not use Thalia as leverage against me. His jaw tightened. I would never hurt her to hurt you. Never. But I will not pretend I am not using her as a reason for you to stay. She is my daughter. That gives me rights, whether you acknowledge them or not. The honesty was brutal, but somehow comforting. At least he was not pretending this was purely about my well-being. What happens after 6 months? We reassess. If you still want to leave, if you still believe I am a danger, we negotiate different terms. But I will not disappear from Thalia's life. That is non-negotiable. So no matter what, you are part of our lives now. Yes, his voice was absolute. You can hate me, resent me, refuse to ever forgive me for forcing this, but you cannot erase me from Thalia's existence. I am her father. That is a permanent condition. I looked at my wine glass, at the candlelight reflecting off the crystal, at anything but his face. Because looking at him meant acknowledging that this made sense, that 6 years of running had not kept us safe, that Lyra's photograph proved how vulnerable we actually were, that the only real protection came from the man I had spent 6 years fleeing. When would this arrangement start? Tomorrow. His answer was immediate. I want you both moved to the estate by noon. The longer you stay exposed, the more risk there is. Tomorrow. I repeated the word, tasting its finality. Less than 24 hours to upend our entire life. Again. I know this is fast. Something in his voice gentled. I know this is not what you wanted. But it is necessary, Ione. Not just for Thalia's safety, but because I cannot lose any more time with her. Every day that passes is a day I do not get back. The grief in his voice decided it. Because however angry I was, however trapped I felt, he was right about one thing. Thalia deserved a father, deserved to know the man whose eyes she had inherited. And if 6 months under his roof was the price of her safety and his redemption, then I would pay it. 6 months. My voice was steady. But I set the boundaries. I decide what Thalia knows and when. And if at any point I believe she is in danger from your world, we are done. Arrangement over. Agreed. He extended his hand across the table. 6 months to prove I am worth trusting again. I looked at his hand, at the offer it represented. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just a temporary truce brokered in desperation and enforced by necessity. I took it. His hand was warm, solid, and for a moment we just stayed like that. Connected across the table by a handshake that felt more binding than any contract. When he released me, I felt the absence immediately. You should get some rest. He stood, moved toward the door. Tomorrow will be a long day. The move, getting Talia settled, establishing routines. What do I tell her? The question stopped him mid-step. About who you are. About why we are suddenly living with you. Tell her the truth. He looked back, something vulnerable crossing his face. That I am her father. That I have been searching for her. That I want to know her. Children understand more than we give them credit for. She is 5, and she already knows something is wrong. Better an honest answer than a lie she will see through. He paused at the door. I will have Dmitri escort you back to your suite, but... No one moves through this hotel without my knowledge, but I am taking no chances. The door closed softly behind him, and I was alone with the weight of what I had agreed to. 6 months. Half a year of living in his world, under his roof, accepting his protection. The girl who had run 6 years ago would never have believed it possible. But that girl had not held a photograph of her daughter taken by enemies she had not known existed. The suite felt too quiet when I returned, too empty despite the luxury. I checked on Talia immediately, some primal need to see her breathing, safe, untouched. She had kicked off her covers and I tucked them back around her, smoothing dark curls from her forehead. She looked so peaceful, so innocent, completely unaware that her entire life had shifted on its axis today. How do I tell you that the nice man with the Roman name is your father? I whispered into the darkness. How do I explain that Maman has been lying for your entire life? She did not answer, just snuggled deeper into the expensive pillows, and I retreated to the sitting area. The city lights sparkled beyond the windows. Paris at night, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Somewhere out there, Lyra Fendrel was planning. The council was watching. Forces I barely understood were moving in patterns I could not predict, and I had just agreed to walk straight into the center of it all. I sank onto the couch, exhaustion pressing against my bones, but sleep felt impossible. My mind kept replaying the day, the café, that first moment of recognition, Thalia's gray eyes meeting his, the photograph, Caius's ultimatum. The handshake that sealed our fate. Had I made the right choice? Or had I just traded one kind of prison for another? My phone vibrated, a text from Saskia. Did you make it safely to the hotel? Should I worry? I typed back quickly. We are safe. Caius has arranged protection. We are moving to his estate tomorrow. The response came within seconds. So you accepted his offer. I did not have a choice. There is always a choice, ma chérie. You chose your daughter's safety over your pride. That is a mother's choice, the right one. I stared at the words, wanting to believe them. But pride felt like too simple an explanation for what I was sacrificing. Independence, autonomy, the life I had built from nothing. 6 years of carefully constructed normalcy about to be dismantled in 24 hours. Another text came through. This one from an unknown number. I opened it cautiously. Your belongings will be packed and transported tomorrow morning. A car will collect you and Talia at 11:30. Dress comfortably for travel. Caius. He had my number. Of course he did. He probably had access to everything. Bank accounts, work schedules, medical records. The thought should have angered me. Instead, I just felt tired. I moved to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. Across the street I could see shadows moving. Dmitri on patrol, maybe. Or one of the other guards Caius had mentioned. Watchers keeping watch. Protection that felt uncomfortably close to surveillance. This was my life now. Guards and protocols, and a man who orchestrated everything with the precision of a general planning war. Because that was what this was, not a relationship. Not a family reconciliation, a tactical maneuver in some conflict I barely understood. But Talia would be safe. I kept coming back to that. Whatever else this arrangement was, Whatever strings were attached, whatever freedom I was surrendering, Thalia would be protected, not by my vigilance alone, worn thin over 6 years of constant fear, but by resources I could never match. Money, connections, trained professionals whose entire purpose was keeping her alive. Was that worth 6 months of my life? Worth living under his roof, following his rules, watching him bond with the daughter I had kept from him? The photograph of Thalia on the swings flashed through my mind. That telephoto lens, that elegant script promising debts would come due. And I knew with absolute certainty that yes, it was worth it. I would give 6 months, 6 years, whatever it took to keep that kind of threat away from my child, even if it meant surrendering to the man I had spent 6 years running from. I checked the time on my phone. 1:15 in the morning. Somewhere in this building, Caius was also awake. Maybe working, maybe pacing, maybe staring at walls the way I was staring at windows, contemplating the same impossible situation from the opposite angle. Did he lie awake thinking about the 6 years he had lost? Did he resent me even as he protected me? Did he question whether this arrangement would work, or if we would destroy each other in the trying? I would never ask him. That kind of vulnerability felt impossible now, with so much history between us, so many lies and assumptions and bitter truths. A sound from Talia's room made me freeze. Just her turning over, mumbling something in her sleep. I waited, barely breathing, until the silence settled again. Then I moved to her doorway, watching her small form in the bed. Tomorrow I would tell her about Caius, about fathers and family and complicated truths. Tomorrow we would pack up our life and move into his world. Tomorrow everything would change again. But tonight, for these last few hours, she was still just mine, still innocent, still the little girl who thought we were on a vacation adventure. I stayed in the doorway, watching her breathe, memorizing this moment of peace before the storm. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, despite all the promises and protections and agreements, I knew this was not over. Lyra had not issued her warning as an idle threat. The council did not simply forgive and forget. And men like Caius, no matter how much they claimed to have changed, still carried violence in their bones. The question was not whether danger would find us again. The question was when, and whether I had made the right choice in accepting his protection, or whether I had just delivered us both straight into the heart of a war we could not win. The answer came at 2:30 in the morning. I had finally dozed off on the couch, still dressed, when a sound jerked me awake. Not loud, deliberate, the scrape of metal against metal, someone working the lock on the suite door. My heart slammed against my ribs. For one frozen second, I thought maybe I had imagined it. Maybe exhaustion and fear had conjured threats from nothing. Then I heard it again, precise, professional, the quiet confidence of someone who knew what they were doing. I moved silently toward Thalia's room, every maternal instinct screaming. My hand was on her doorknob when the suite door clicked open. Dmitri should have been outside. Dmitri should have stopped this, unless Dmitri was already dead. The thought crystallized my terror into something sharp and useful. I locked Talia's door from the inside, scooped her from the bed. She woke with a confused mumble. Shh, mon cœur. My voice was barely a whisper. We are playing a game. We need to be very, very quiet. Her eyes went wide, but she nodded, understanding on some primal level that this was serious. I carried her to the bathroom, the only room with a second lock, and set her in the tub. Stay here. Do not make a sound, no matter what you hear. Maman, I am scared. I know, baby. I was already dialing Caius's number, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. But Maman will keep you safe, I promise. The call connected. My sweet. I kept my voice low, urgent. Someone is inside. Talia is locked in the bathroom. I heard movement on his end, sharp and immediate. Do not engage. Stay with her. I am 30 seconds away. The line stayed open. I could hear him moving, running, and then his voice barking orders to someone else in rapid Italian. 20 seconds. Hold on, Ione. Through the bathroom door, I heard footsteps in the suite, slow, methodical, not trying to hide anymore. Whoever this was knew I was awake, knew I was trapped. Maman? Talia's whisper was terrified. I put my finger to my lips, pulled her against me. Prayed to gods I did not believe in that Caius would be fast enough. The footsteps stopped outside the bedroom door. 10 seconds, Ione. Caius's voice in my ear was the only thing keeping me from complete panic. Stay quiet. The bedroom door opened. I heard someone cross to the bathroom, test the handle, found it locked. There was a pause, then a voice. Cultured, male, speaking English with a Russian accent. Madame Volkov. No need for drama. We simply want to talk. I did not answer, did not breathe, just held Thalia tighter and counted seconds. 5, 4, 3. The council sent me to deliver a message. You and the child are invited to leave Paris, permanently. Consider it a courtesy before things become unpleasant. 2. 1. The suite's main door crashed open with the sound of splintering wood. I heard Caius's voice, cold and lethal. Step away from that bathroom. A moment of silence. Then the intruder, conversational. Vetrano. I thought you had retired. I did. What happened next was fast, brutal, efficient. The crack of bone, a choked gasp, the heavy thud of a body hitting the floor. You just ended my retirement. More sounds. A scuffle. Another impact. Then silence so complete it was worse than the violence. Ione. Caius's voice at the bathroom door, gentle, despite what had just happened. It is safe now. Open the door. My hands were shaking too hard. I tried the lock twice before managing to turn it. The door swung open and Caius was there. Blood spattered across his white shirt, knuckles raw. But his eyes were focused entirely on us. Is she hurt? I shook my head, unable to speak. He crouched, bringing himself to Thalia's level. She had her face buried against my shoulder. Hey, Piccola. It is okay now. No one will hurt you. There was a bad man. Thalia's voice was muffled. I heard him. I know. And he is gone now, I promise. He looked up at me, something fierce and protective blazing in his eyes. Pack whatever you need immediately. We are leaving in 5 minutes. What about... He is alive. Barely. My people will handle him and extract information. His jaw was tight. But this proves the threat is immediate. No more delays. No more discussions. You and Talia are coming with me right now. I wanted to argue, wanted to demand explanations about how someone had gotten past Dmitri, past hotel security, past all the protection Caius had promised. But Thalia was trembling against me, and there was blood on the floor of our bedroom, and a man unconscious in the next room. Dmitri. I managed. Alive. Drugged. Not dead. They needed him incapacitated but not murdered. Less attention that way. Caius stood, offered his hand. Come. I will carry Thalia if you need to pack. I'm already dressed. I took his hand, let him pull me up. Everything else can be replaced. Smart woman. He moved into the bedroom, carefully avoiding the intruder sprawled on the floor. I glimpsed the man's face. Young, maybe 30, professional looking. Nothing about him screamed danger except the lock-picking tools scattered near the door and the gun in a holster at his hip. 2 more men entered the suite, clearly Caius's people. They moved with military precision, already securing the scene. Take him to the secondary location. Caius's voice was flat, emotionless. I want to know who sent him, who else knows about this location, and what the council is planning. Use whatever methods necessary. The men nodded, efficient and grim. One of them glanced at me and Talia with something like sympathy before they lifted the unconscious intruder and carried him out. Caius turned back to me. some of the hardness leaving his face. I am sorry you had to see this, had to experience this. But maybe now you understand why the estate is not optional. I understand. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I understand that running was never going to work, that they will always find us, that you were right about everything. I wish I had been wrong. He reached out slowly, carefully, and touched Talia's curls. I would give anything for this threat to be imaginary. But it is real, and it is here, and we need to move now. Talia lifted her head from my shoulder, looked at Caius with those gray eyes so like his. Are you really my papa? The question stopped him cold. For a moment, the dangerous man disappeared, and all that remained was someone vulnerable and uncertain. I am. And you will keep us safe? With my life. The vow was absolute. No one will ever hurt you, Thalia. I promise. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. We can go to your house now. Just like that. The trust of a child offered freely, where I had withheld mine for 6 years. Caius's eyes met mine over her head, shining with something that might have been tears if he allowed himself such weakness. Let us go home. His voice was rough. All of us. Together. And because danger had proven itself real, because my daughter had just promised her trust to a man she barely knew, because I had no other choice left, I nodded. We left the hotel at 2:55 in the morning, stepping into a waiting car surrounded by guards, leaving behind our temporary safety and walking directly into the permanent protection of a man whose world had just invaded ours with violence and blood. The war I had feared was not coming. It was already here. The car was armored. I could tell by the weight of the doors, the thickness of the glass. Caius sat in front beside the driver, turned partially so he could see us in the back seat. Talia had fallen asleep against me within minutes, exhausted by fear and adrenaline, her small body finally surrendering to the safety of his presence. 2 more vehicles flanked us, one ahead and one behind. A convoy moving through Paris at 3 in the morning, like we were heads of state, instead of refugees fleeing danger we had not known existed until tonight. Who was he? My voice was low, careful not to wake Talia. The man in the suite. Caius's jaw tightened. Alexei Morozov, former Russian intelligence, freelance now, the council's preferred contractor for delicate situations. Delicate meaning kidnapping a child. Or worse. His voice went flat. Morozov does not leave witnesses unless specifically instructed. The fact that he tried to talk to you first means they wanted you cooperative. They would have taken Thalia regardless. The words settled like ice in my stomach. If I had not woken up, if I had not locked the door, if Caius had been even 30 seconds slower, but I did, and you did, and she is safe. He reached back, almost touched Talia's hair, then pulled his hand away, as if the right to touch her still needed to be earned. That is all that matters now. We left Paris proper, heading into countryside I barely registered. Trees became shadows streaming past the windows, the occasional light from distant houses. The world reduced to this car, this moment, this irrevocable choice. The estate appeared suddenly, gated and imposing. High walls topped with security measures I could not identify in the darkness. Guards at the entrance who stepped aside as our convoy approached. The gates swung open silently, and we drove through into another world entirely. The house was not what I expected. Not ostentatious or cold. It was old stone and warm light, sprawling but somehow intimate. Gardens I could barely see in the darkness, trees that must have been ancient, space that spoke of safety rather than showiness. Caius turned to look at me fully. Welcome home. The words should have felt like mockery. Instead, they felt like prophecy. The car stopped at the main entrance. Caius exited first, opened my door, reached for Thalia. Let me. You have been carrying her all night. I should have refused, should have maintained that boundary. But my arms ached, and Thalia was solid weight, and I was so tired I could barely think. I let him take her, watched him cradle her against his chest with unexpected gentleness. She did not wake, just shifted slightly and settled against him like she had been doing this her entire life. A woman appeared in the doorway, older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense air. "This is Vera," Kaya said quietly. "She manages the house. Anything you or Talia need, she will provide." "Madam." Vera's French was accented but warm. "Your rooms are ready. I have put fresh linens on the beds and there are clothes in the closets, though we can get whatever you prefer tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word felt surreal. As if there would be a tomorrow that was normal, routine, safe. "Thank you." My voice came out thin. Vera led us inside. The entrance hall was exactly as I had imagined artwork that was probably priceless, but arranged with care rather than for show. It felt lived in, real. We climbed wide stairs to the second floor. Vera opened a set of double doors into a suite that made the hotel rooms look cramped. Sitting area, 2 bedrooms connected by a shared space, windows that would probably overlook the gardens in daylight. "I will leave you to settle." Vera touched my arm gently. "There are guards at every entrance. You are completely safe here, madame. Try to rest." She disappeared silently, leaving the three of us alone in this borrowed sanctuary. Caius carried Thalia to one of the bedrooms, laid her on a bed that could have fit 3 children her size. She mumbled something unintelligible, clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter, but did not wake. He pulled covers over her with careful precision, then stood there looking down at her. 6 years. His voice was barely audible. 6 years of this, tucking her in, watching her sleep, knowing she is safe. "You have that now." I moved to stand beside him, looking down at our daughter. "You have all the time in the world, because you gave up running." He looked at me, something raw in his expression. "Because you finally accepted that I am not the monster you thought." "No." I held his gaze. "Because I finally accepted that your monsters are less dangerous than the ones chasing us. That is not the same thing as trust. It is a start." He moved toward the door, paused in the threshold. "Get some rest, Ione. Tomorrow we figure out what comes next." What comes next is 6 months of this. I gestured at the room, the house, the life we were stepping into. 6 months of learning if this arrangement can actually work. And if it cannot? The question was careful, neutral. Then we find another solution. But tonight, looking at the door that had been breached, at my daughter sleeping in a bed protected by more than my worn vigilance, I knew with sudden clarity that there was no other solution. Running had failed. Distance had failed. 6 years of fear and isolation had accomplished nothing except delaying this inevitable moment. Caius had been right about everything. The threats were real. The protection was necessary. And the only path to true safety led straight through the heart of the power I had spent 6 years fleeing. I was not running anymore. I was choosing. Actively, consciously, choosing to walk into his world, to accept his protection, to let him be a father to our daughter. Not because I forgave him for the 6 years he had demanded back, not because I trusted him with my heart the way I had before, but because I trusted him with something more important, with her life. And that, I realized as I watched him disappear down the hallway, was a different kind of surrender. Not defeat, not capitulation, but the clear-eyed acknowledgement that some battles could not be won alone. I moved to the window, looked out over grounds I would explore in daylight. Somewhere out there, beyond the walls and the guards and the security measures, danger still waited. Lyra and her council, Morozov and whoever had hired him, all the shadows from Caius's past that refused to stay buried. But in here, for tonight at least, we were safe. I checked on Thalia one last time, her small chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. She would wake up in a new home, with a father she barely knew, in a life completely different from the one I had built. And somehow, impossibly, it felt less like an ending than a beginning. Not of us as a couple, not of forgiveness or reconciliation, or the kind of love story that erased 6 years of pain and separation, but of something more pragmatic and perhaps more honest. A family forged from necessity, built on protection rather than passion, held together by a child who deserved better than our mistakes. I lay down in the other bedroom, still dressed, still wired with adrenaline despite the exhaustion. The bed was soft, the room was quiet, and for the first time in 6 years, I fell asleep without checking locks or listening for footsteps. Because someone else was doing that now. Because I had finally stopped running and started moving toward the only real safety that existed in a world as dangerous as ours, toward him. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.